In this video, we're going to take a look at some awesome bottles of whiskey. So welcome back to the channel, everyone, and before we delve into the bottles, we've got to address the elephant in the room, and that is, where did I get such a good haircut? Because I know a lot of you are thinking that right now. Well, actually, if you're ever in Congleton, go to my friend's place, Barbertini, ask for Al, absolutely awesome barbers, and just a great local business. But you probably didn't come here to figure out about where I got my haircut. You probably wanted to see some awesome bottles of whiskey, and that's what we're doing here now. So let's start with a bit of a bang. 1957, 50-year-old Auchentoshan, which I'm going to pronounce incredibly wrong, but distillery based just outside of Glasgow, triple distilled whiskey, and this really is an amazing bottle. So, you know, just from the presentation on this alone, really gorgeous. It's a metal case that appears to have been sort of like engraved on it almost with a machine, like a machine engraving. Single cask, big sherry cask. I think it was a sherry butt that it came out of, and you know, just the presentation of it is super gorgeous. But then the bottle itself looks like one of the Glencairn decanters, this super heavy slab base on it, but it's only of 144 bottles. It's 50-year-old, distilled in 1957, and it's not really expensive in the scheme of 50-year-old whiskies. We've got it on for just under £5,000. Which, yes, it is expensive for a bottle of whiskey, but it's at the moment, what, a quarter of the price of the Macallan Distillery World, you know, the New York edition. And this is a 50-year-old single malt. New York, what is it? No age statement, 3-5 years old, go figure. So this is just a really nice, beautifully presented bottle. Obviously, it's been released for quite a while. It was released in 2007 and pretty scarce on the market. And it is actually quite an affordable way to get into 50-year-old bottlings. So there's the first bottle, and the next one I'm excited to talk about too. So let's just put this one back. And here we go. We've got a Banff 1971. Hands up who knows about Banff. Now, I obviously can't see your hand, so I'm going to tell you a little about it anyway, and you can't tell me to stop, but you can wind on if you already know. So Banff is arguably one of the unluckiest distilleries that has ever been online. It was set up in 1824, and then in 1877 there was a fire, destroyed it all. Rebuilt it, we're back online, we're good to go. The war comes, 1941, gets bombed to the ground, all the warehouses destroyed, and there's anecdotal evidence to suggest that all the whiskey went into the local watercourses and all the sheep ended up a little bit merry, shall we say. I don't know how true that is, but if you read online at the histories, that is reported in quite a few instances. And then to sort of further sort of add insult to injury, after rebuilding again, 1959, caught fire again, one of the stills exploded. So maybe it's a very jinxed distillery, and yes it is, and it closed down in 1983. And then just to add insult to injury, just before the warehouse was about to be destroyed, guess what? Caught fire again. You really can't sort of like talk too much about the poor, you know, poor luck of Banff. But the thing is, there's not much Banff on the market. You don't find many single malt releases, single cask releases of Banff. There's obviously the rare malts Banff that's been out, but this one, it's a gorgeous 37-year-old bottling. It's actually by, I don't know if you can see on the case here, the Dead Whisky Society. Now, there's not many Dead Whisky Society bottlings out there. They're quite uncommon, and it's something that I don't really know too much about. So if anyone's got any information on this bottler, do let me know, because he had some really nice presentation. You know, case is really nice. There's a little certificate of authenticity there as well. And the whiskey itself here, it's a 37-year-old, distilled on the 4th of March 1971, and, you know, bottled 6th of the 8th 2008. So just a gorgeous whiskey. And again, like, for what it is, for a distillery that's no longer in production, that's completely razed to the ground, there's not any chance of any more of it coming online, like Brora's, for instance. You know, 1,200 quid. It's a gorgeous bottle of whiskey, really nicely presented, and one that I actually sort of quite like this sort of elegant style of labelling, handwritten details on there, which is actually handwritten. So it makes me think that the Dead Whisky Society was actually quite a small, perhaps very small indie bottling operation. So here's the next one, and it's a Brora. Now, unlike Banff was sort of obviously destroyed, razed to the ground and never to open again. Brora obviously has reopened, it's come back online, but it's got a bit more of a complex history than that. So Brora was set up in 1819 and it was originally called the Clynelish Distillery. For whatever reason, it wasn't for whatever reason, they just needed to produce more whiskey. So in 1967, DCL, they opened up another distillery just over the road from the Brora distillery and called that one Clynelish B. Now, in 1968, a year after that new distillery had opened, they closed the O's distillery. And then a few years later, in 1968, they reopened the original distillery. Now, the original distillery was, it's just complicated. I'm going to do a video on this one because it's so complicated. But anyway, 1968, the original Clynelish distillery was reopened. It's called Brora this time round, and it was closed in 1983. It was closed until 2021, when obviously it's come back online. And in 2021, they obviously released the Brora Triptych, which is an awesome set of whiskies. And I'm not sure on the way that we're going to release these videos, but it's likely that on the next video that you see on this channel, you're going to see an awesome unboxing of the Triptych bottling. Now, coming back to this bottle, a 23-year-old, distilled in 1982, so it's quite an early single malt bottlings as they go. It's bottled in 2006, part of the Old Malt Cask series by Douglas Lang. And here you go. What a gorgeous bottle. So what is it? Is it a single cask? It's from one of 340 bottles filled from cask. So yeah, it's filled from cask. I think we kind of get that much. 50% proof, so it's obviously been diluted at some point down to 50% ABV, but still a higher than sort of 43 or 46. So these do tend to get quite good reviews because the higher bottling ABV tends to give it a bit more oomph, should we say, is the technical term. And that really is a gorgeous bottle. And again, look, we keep saying it's not expensive, but yeah, these are bloody expensive bottles of whiskey. But £1,000, that's a heck of a bottle of whiskey. That's a 1982 Brora from the last, the second to last year of its production for £1,200, for £1,000. It really is. I think you've got to look at value and price. The price is expensive, but perhaps the value on this one, especially with what's going to be happening to Brora from a marketing and publicity perspective, once the Diageo marketing machine gathers momentum, is only going to really go in one way. So let's come down a bit. Let's save you some money. Let's say that you want to buy a bottle of Brora. Your heart's set on buying a bottle of Brora. What are you going to buy? But you've only got £600. Well, you know what? You can also buy a Connoisseurs Choice Brora, distilled in 1982, bottled 1997, so a bit younger than the Douglas Lang bottling. But these Connoisseurs Choice bottlings are probably like one of the bedrock bottlings of the of the indie bottling world, really. The first iteration was sort of the black and red labels. The second iteration was sort of the browns, basically all the browns, and then the third iteration of the Connoisseurs Choice was this sort of map label. Ran from sort of 1989 to about 1997, give or take, and they just are quite elegant and good looking bottles, bottled by Gordon and MacPhail, obviously, and they're all down at 40%. And again, that doesn't tend to hinder them too much. When you look at the reviews, especially some of the early ones, they get phenomenal reviews on Whiskey Fun and places like that. So again, this is just a nice bottle, complete with its original box. Anyone who knows these boxes knows how crap these little windows are. But it really is a well-presented bottle for 600 quid. And you look at what you can buy as a modern release for £600. You're not really touching anything. And I think something like this, it's been on the market for the best part of 25, 26, 27 years, to me, it's a no-brainer. Now, let's look at something pretty spectacular. Now, until this had been brought into me by a customer, I'd never seen this bottling before. I'd not seen it at auction, I've not seen it in any books, but it's one of those bottles that once you've seen it, you start seeing it pop up all over the place to a certain extent. Now, any guesses to what it is? It's the Bunnahabhain. Now, it is the Centenary bottling. It's a 20-year-old bottling. Now, I'm going to put this on its back because it's a bit of a tricky bottle to get out. Let's get the bottle out and let's get the stopper. Now, the box itself, there we go. nice looking box, faded on the front. I think that's been in the sun quite a bit, and that's why it's not this sort of deep green colour like it is. But it's a 20-year-old Bunnahabhain released for their Centenary, and it's in this beautiful etched decanter. So on the front here it's etched, and we've got all the details about the distillery there. Underneath it's etched, and it's number 79 out of 600 bottles. So the Centenary was from 1983, so obviously it was set up 100 years prior to that in 1883, and it really is, well, to be honest with you, it's a frightening bottle to post. It really is a fragile, to a certain extent, decanter, but it's rare, you know what I mean? When you look at the auction results for these, there's so few of them. We've got it listed for about £3,500, give or take, and this one is complete with the box, the stopper and everything. It's got a very good fill level in here. It's actually a litre bottling, and you know, quite often when you look at decanters, even when you look at the likes of some of the more modern Macallan decanters or anything that's bottled in a Glencairn decanter, if it's a hand-blown decanter, the internal volume will change because it varies from blow to blow, if that makes sense. And that's why you will often get what would appear to be differing fill levels. Now again, a good way to measure this is to weigh them, because obviously you know a litre of whiskey should weigh about 1 kilo, and with that in mind, let's get this on the scales and see where we stand with it. Let's just tear that. And it's 1.75, so 1,751 grams. So obviously if you've got a litre of liquid, that should weigh a kilogram, and then obviously you've got 700 grams there. So this really doesn't appear to have lost much during, gosh, what is it? The nearly 40 years since that's been bottled. So it really is quite a scarce bottle, one for your collection. The green glass as well will actually prevent the oxidization of the, or it will prevent the reaction with UV light, which is why you'll find a lot of port and wine bottled in green and amber bottles, because that's better at filtering out the UV light compared to clear glass. But yeah, what can I say? Absolutely stunning bottle of whiskey, and I'm going to keep that stopper actually. Let's put that somewhere safe down here. Now, we're getting on to one of my favourite bottles now. Give yourself a pat on the back if you know what it is already just from this angle, because it's obviously a 19, I'm not going to tell you the vintage just yet. Any guesses? Get in the comments below, did you get the vintage right? Because it's not common to see this branding on the front of the box orientated the other way around. Anyway, it's a 25-year-old Macallan Anniversary Malt. Now let's start with this part here, concerning the Macallan. So this is the original marketing material that came with the bottle when it was first produced. It's basically like a sales pitch, why Macallan is arguably the best. Just talking about the small stills, the beautiful sherry casks that they use. So yeah, in a Sunday Times blind tasting of the 20 most popular malts, the Macallan edged with an exceptional quotient of 93.78%. Its nearer competitor achieved no more than 62.8%. So the Sunday Times readers in the 1980s were absolutely spot on. And here, before we go to the bottle, is all the annoying straw. Anyone who's dealt with these knows that this straw gets everywhere, breaks up, decomposes, goes all over your desk when you're trying to keep a nice office. But obviously it contains a really nice whiskey. Now this one is the 1958. Now there's two vintages of the 1958 in the Anniversary Malt series. You've got the 58 on its own, and then you've got the 58/59. Of course, 1957 was the first vintage of this series, and this 58 is one of the few of the vintages that actually comes under a screw cap. Now, look, this is an expensive bottle. It's just over £6,000. But as we'll look at when we look at the next bottling, I think it's actually cheap and much better value. Now, it's a beautiful label. I've always loved this series. This one always throws me a bit because the type font, you know, the font setting on the percentage ABV and the 75 centilitres there is different to them, but it's just a gorgeous bottle of whiskey. And, you know, if I had £6,000 to stick in a bottle of whiskey, the Anniversary Malt would be one of my first picks. So let's put this safely back. And you've got to be careful when you're doing this, because sometimes if you don't, I've seen people push these up and the bottle's not being completely away where it needs to be, and then the label gets a nice big tear going up it. Now, let's assume that you don't want to spend £6 grand. Let's say that you want to spend £10,000 on a bottle of whiskey. Well, what mind-blowingly exceptional whiskey should you buy? Anyone guess it from this packaging yet? I'm sure some of you have got these bottles in your collections. Let's see if we can get it out. Here we go. Any guesses? A Macallan Folio 4. Released in 2019 for £250. A year ago, in May 2021, these bottles were selling for £2,300 at auction. In May 2022, one of these made £8,500 hammer price, which is £9,250 after commission. Plus you would have had to pay for insurance, plus you would have had to pay for shipping. We've got this one listed, it's a little bit more than that, it's still in the 9,000s though. I'll put the price on the screen for you now. But love him or hate him, the Folio series has got a following. There's something driving this growth. Is it genuine growth? Are people manipulating the markets perhaps? We can only really speculate, but you look at the numbers and the folios are only really going in one direction. Now, they are nicely presented. A good example of this modern trait by distilleries to over-package their whiskies in order to perhaps divert attention away from the whiskey, because this is what? The no age statement Macallan, really beautifully presented, you can't knock that. But seriously, like, why and where is this growth coming from? But anyway, we've got this one available. It's available for immediate dispatch. It's here now, you can buy it, we can send you more photographs of it. And you don't have to sort of go through that anxiety of auction. In 12 months time, will it have tripled in again? Will it be 30 grand? Who knows? I think there's been a lot of growth in the last sort of 6 months in the folios, but there has been all the other months previously to that. So who knows? Anyway, let's get on to our next bottle. Now, it's another old malt cask bottling here. Another beautiful distillery, the Port Ellen distillery, arguably produced some of the best whiskies that there ever been made. I think a Port Ellen holds a record for a Whiskey Fun review by Serge. Really is gorgeous whiskey, and this is again, like, come on, it is quite cheap. You know, it's about £1,000 or so. It's a 1982 26-year-old, specially selected and bottled for the Isla Whiskey Shop. So this is another Douglas Lang bottling from the Old Malt Cask series, but actually quite a limited release for the Isla Whiskey Shop. And Port Ellen is probably going to go through this surge that we're going to see with Brora once it comes back online. I don't think the distillery is completely back online yet, but once it is back online, what are Diageo going to do? There's going to be huge marketing budgets pushing it out there. We're going to see almost certainly some massively priced Port Ellen and more releases like the Brora Triptych. So I think the value of these bottles will continue to grow going forward, and with good reason. It's good whiskey, it's high age statement, it's single cask, it's limited numbers, it's in its original packaging. There's a lot going for it, and when you compare that to say the Macallans, which are like the folios, it's got fancy packaging, but the whiskey inside, to me, there's a vulnerability there perhaps with the folios, that there isn't anything propping up those prices. But maybe in this market, maybe I'm just old school and thinking that who gives a damn about the whiskey, because we're never going to do it. You know, with watches, the watch that NASA certified to go to space is a Casio G-Shock that you can buy for £80. It's not just about the practical item, you know, the practical utilitarian nature of that item anymore, is it? So anyway, that's me rambling. Now, again, quite often people tell me, Mark, I've got £10,000 to spend and I love whiskey, but I can't face buying another bottle of whiskey. What can I buy? Take £10,000 off me. Well, I don't get that all the time. But if any of you do have that question or that problem, how about you treat yourself to a whiskey number plate, WH15KY0. So obviously if you grew up anywhere that spells whiskey correctly, it is a really good whiskey plate. There's no fancy numbers missing in the middle here, no sort of spacing that's happened here. And if you do live in part of the world where you spell whiskey with an E, I'm just afraid you're wrong, sorry about that. But these are, you know, it's not cheap. 10 grand for a number plate, but seriously, look how good a number plate that is. You know, stick it on your business expense. As long as you've got a car that's older, that's more recent than a 15 plate, you're okay. You can't go for it for a car that's any older than a 15 plate though. So you can't make your old car look newer. Now, in case 10 grand wasn't enough for you to spend on a number plate, we've also got these WH15SKY. These are 15 grand, and it doesn't even spell whiskey as neatly, but it does visually look a bit different. So get in the comments, someone's going to buy you this free of charge. Which one would you put on your car, or would you just not go there? Would you rather spend 10 grand on a Folio 4, or would you rather spend 10 grand on a 1958-59 Anniversary Malt, a Banff, a Brora, and the Port Ellen? You know what I mean? So anyway, that is the end of our little foray into some new bottles that we've got in here. Should we do more videos like this? I quite enjoy making them. What videos do you want us to see doing more of? Get in the comments and let us know. And if you've got any questions about the whiskey that you've seen here today, comment and I'll be happy to help.